Chapter 13, we read once again about David's attempt to bring the ark, the Aron, to his city, Ir David, Yerushalayim, as we call it, Sion. When I say we read it again, is because we saw it, of course, way back when in the book of Shmuel. That was the first time he attempted. And now chapter 15 is going to talk about the second time. And if you remember from the book of Shmuel, this time it's successful. Vayaslo vatim be'ir David vayachein makom la'aron vahelohim vayet lo ohel. So we saw in the last chapter that was talking about David consolidating his reign and having more children in Jerusalem, and Hiram, the king of Tsur, sending Arzei Levanon and builders and craftsmen. So David made his houses for himself. And in addition here, he also prepares a place for the Aron. He still, even though it's been, at least the telling in this story, is that the ark was not able to come because perhaps it didn't have a proper place or something. That's part of what's going on here. And we'll see one of the discrepancies, the differences between the way it's told in this book and the other book is this book here. It's much more like David learns from his mistake. In the book of Shmuel, Uzzah sticks out his hand to sort of support the Aron, and he dies, and that's sort of what happens. And there's not a good explanation, and you're left very puzzled from the chapter. And you say, okay, I understand that the ark God doesn't need our help, but nevertheless, Uzzah was doing a good thing. And here we're going to see that the focus sort of changes back onto David, which again, like we've said many times, Divrei Hayamim Chronicles, much more about David, much more about the Mikdash, much more about him, and not making any mistakes. So now he realizes, the way it's retold, that he's ready. And thus we have verse 2. Az Amar David. Then David said as following. Lo laseit daron Elohim ki im haleviyim ki vam bachar Adonai laseit daron Adonai u'lisharto ad olam. David says, who is going to carry the ark? Who's going to be next to it? The Levites. He changes it. It's not going to be Uzzah. It's going to be the Leviyim who are going to do it. And this goes, of course, with the Torah. Go back to the Mishkan, where the different families of the Leviyim were the ones who carried the different pieces of the Mishkan in the desert. And thus now, second chance, Vayakel David Kol Yisrael Yerushalayim la'alot et Aron Adonai el mekomo asher ichin lo. So David gathers everybody to Jerusalem to bring the ark to the place which he had prepared for it. Vayasof David et bnei Aaron ve'et haLeviyim. David gathers the Levites and the priests, the descendants of Aaron. Livnei Kahat Uriel Hasar ve'echav mea ve'esrim. We have Uriel and 120 of his family members with him. Livnei Merari Asaya Hasar ve'echav Matayim ve'esrim. We have from the sons of Merari Asaya another 220. Livnei Gershom Yoel Asar ve'echav Mea Ushloshim. And we have from the family of Gershom, we have 130. There are three children of Levi, Gershom, Kahat, and Merari, and that's the way that it's divided here. And we're told Livnei Elitzaphan, Shemai Asar ve'achav Ma'atayim. And the sons of Elitzaphan, we have 200. Now Elitzaphan is a descendant of Kahat. I don't know why it's mentioned separately. Livnei Chevron, Eliel Hasar ve'achav Shmonim. We're told about from Eliel, there are 80 along with him. Livnei Uziel, Aminadav Asar ve'achav mea u'shnei mesrei. Sons of Uziel, Aminadav's in charge at 112. Okay, so we have a lot of the different families. Vayikra David leTzadok leVyatar konim. So David calls for Tzadok and Evyatar, the priests, uLeviyim, leUriel, Asaya, veYoel, Shemaiah, veEliel, veAminadav. And those mentioned as the heads of sort of the families, the clans of the tribe of the Leviyim. Vayomer lahem, we're in verse 12, pasuk Yud Bet. Atem roshei avot Leviyim hitkadshu atem v'acheichem v'alitem et ha'aron Adonai Elohei Yisrael el hachinoti lo. And David calls them in, and this is also something that's changed here, right? David's preparation is very important here. You have to go and sanctify yourself, like before Matan Torah, where God tells Moshe to tell the people to sanctify themselves for 3 days, to separate. There's not time for sexual activity, right? Sanctify yourselves and the fellow Levites, right? If you're going to bring the ark up, we have to be as mindful and as ready as we can possibly be, and then we're going to be able to bring it up to the place where I prepared for it. Ki lema berishona lo atem paratz Adonai Eloheinu banu ki lo derashnuhu kamishvat, because you were not there the first time, and God burst out against us. This Peretz, right? Peretz Uzzah, God burst out through and made this destruction. we didn't show proper regard. We did not ask God. We didn't doresh. You guys didn't do anything wrong. And he's sort of saying, I did it wrong. I made a mistake. I should have asked God. And in fact, right, the in-between chapter between the 13 and 15, chapter 14, where we have David building his houses and David's kids in Jerusalem and David going to war against the Plishtim and asking God, should I go to battle with them? Should I not? And God giving him even military strategy. We see the way that it is literary. The literary sequence is showing David's learned and David needs to turn to God more, even though he always has God in his mind. That's part of the lesson that we see in this chapter for David. So they sanctify themselves. What does that mean exactly? Go to the mikvah. I don't know. So the Levites, they carry the ark of God, but with poles, as was commanded to Moshe. This was the word of God. So here again, we see the distinction. They're copying, mimicking the way it was done in the desert with the Mishkan. Vayomer David l'Sarei Levim la'amid et hachem hamishorim klei shir. Sorry, phone call came in for some reason. Just start with that pasuk again. Tetzai vayomer David l'Sarei Levim la'amid et hachem hamishorim b'klei shir. Nivalim v'chinorim u'mitzaltayim mashmiim laharim b'kol l'simcha. David ordered the officers and the Levites to install, right, their fellows, the singers, musical instruments and harps and lyres and cymbals, making joy and their voices heard, which was done the first time. We talked about David's dancing and the music, the procession. We talked about that this is like the Torah dedication on steroids. It's not just a Torah dedication, it is the Ark of God. So it's talking about the different people that were appointed to do different jobs. Zechariah ben V'Ya'aziel u'Shmi Ramot v'Chiel v'Uni Eliyahu v'Naya u'Masayahu u'Matityahu v'Elifilehu u'Mikaneyahu v'Oved Adom v'El Hashorim. So, right, and others who were the second rank, and here, if somebody asks you who Matityahu was, of course, you know the Matityahu from the Hanukkah story, and you can sound smart or annoying when you say he's first mentioned, the name Matityahu in Divrei Hayamim, Aleph Perek Tet Vav, as far as I can tell. And obviously it's the name of a Levite. It would make sense that later on it's the name of somebody from the, who is a Kohen. Matityahu, of course, Kohen's family, the Chashmonim are Kohanim. V'Amishorim, Heman, Asaf, Eitan, Mitzaltayim, Nechoshet, Lashmiya, and we talked about the singers, Heman, Asaf, and Eitan, and with their symbols, their bronze symbols. And of course, we've said many times the family of Asaph, after Asaph is probably living during the time of David, but his descendants for generations become great singers. We don't know if it's his genetic descendants. We know if it's a guild of Leviim, and we talked much about how I believe 10 chapters in the Tehillim are Mizmorei LaAsaph, from the family or from the guild of these wonderful singers and musicians during the first temple period. Uzechariah, we're in verse 20, Va'aziel, Ushmi Ramot, V'Chiel, V'Uni, V'Eliyav, V'Maseu, V'Nayahu, V'Nevalim, Alamot, and these ones are playing on the harps. Umatityo, V'Elifilehu, Miknayahu, V'Oved Adom, V'Yel, V'Azaziahu, B'Kninorot, Ala Shminit Lenetzach. And then we have these, the next number of people who are playing the lyres and the lead on the Shminit. Shminit is presumably a musical instrument that we've had mentioned as well back in the book of Tehillim. Uchinanayahu Sar Halavim b'Masa Yasor b'Masa Ki Mevinhu, and Hananiah, officer of the Levites, he was in charge of the singing. I don't know if that meant we'd call him the conductor today. It's hard to understand. Was he the conductor? Was he the lead singer in the in the chorus? Unclear, but we're getting a picture here of beautiful singing with instruments and making a real joyous attempt of it, following the way of God, preparation for it, advanced planning, sanctity for it. Uverechia ve'elkanah, sho'arim la'aron. Berech and Elkanah were the gatekeepers for the ark. Presumably they are in the place where Uzzah was the first time, standing next to the ark. Ushevanyahu v'Yoshafat u'Netanel v'Amasai u'Zechariah v'Nayahu v'Eleazar haKohanim mechatzrim b'chatzotzot lefnei Aaron Elohim v'Oved Adom v'Yechia sho'arim la'Aaron. So we have a number of Kohanim who are mentioned with their trumpets before the ark of God, and Ovadja and Yechia were gatekeepers also for the ark. I think, remember, go back to the book of Yehoshua, all the long time ago when Yehoshua brought the Jews into Israel, crossing the Jordan. The Aron was not in the front. I believe there were people, and I think they were Kohanim, although I don't remember, who walked in front of the ark as well back then, although I can't remember. It's like the fifth chapter or so, or sixth chapter, or third chapter of the book of Yoshua. You can look back when we're completed. So here as well, we have a similar procession, people in front of the Aron. Not that they're greater than the Aron, not following it, but it's to advance the Aron. They are the people who walk in front with the rose petals, or whatever way we would want to think of it, or the trumpets announcing that the king is arriving. Continuing Pasuk Chaf Hey, Vayihi David v'ziknei Yisrael v'sarei alafim alachim la'alot Aron Brit Adonai min Beit Oved Edom b'simcha. So David and all the elders of Israel are joyous, going up to bring up the ark. Vayihi be'zor ha'elohim et halavim nosei Aron Brit Adonai v'zbechu shiva parim v'shiva elim. And what are they doing as well? They're offering sacrifices, 7 bulls and 7 rams as they're on their way. V'David mechur bal b'mi'il butz v'chol haLeviyim hanosim et Aaron v'hameshorim u'chenanya hasar hamasa hameshorim v'al David ephod bad. So we're told here specifically that David and all the Levites who were carrying the ark and the singers were wrapped in robes of fine linen. David wore a linen ephod. So we see here, again, it's more the preparation. And this is interesting. David here is almost with this linen ephod. It's like he's the Kohen Gadol. It's like he's the high priest. He's the one orchestrating the event. He's wearing special clothing, even different than what everybody else was wearing. And again, shows the centrality of David in this process, in this procession, in making everything go correctly the second time around. V'chol Yisrael ma'alim et Aron Brit Adonai b'truah v'kol shofar v'chatzotrot u'v'metzil tayim mashmi'im b'nevalim v'chinarot. And all of Israel's bring up the ark together with shouts, blasts of horns, trumpets, cymbals, harps, and lyres. Vayi Aron Brit Adonai ba'al ad ir David u'Michal bat Shaul nishkafa ba'ad hachalon v'teret hamelech David meraked u'mesachek v'tivez lo biliba. And the ark of God arrived at the city of David, and Michal, the daughter of Shaul, David's wife, she peered out, looked out the window and saw King David leaping and dancing, and she despised him for it. That's mentioned in the book there. It's not mentioned here that David says to her, "What's your problem?" And she sort of says, "As you're being extremely disrespectful in the way you're acting." And David says back to her, "Last time I checked, God chose me and not your father. Like the way that you and your family like to do things obviously was not appreciated by God. So who are you?" And David and Michal, sort of their marriage ends there back in the book of Shmuel, and she doesn't have any children. It talks about here. We don't see all of that. We just see her as the as somebody who's unhappy with the way that things are going. And I think it's trying to demonstrate there was a slight bit of dissent to what David was happening, but maybe it was somebody who had some latent anger against David from her family being removed, right? And we talked about this, that Shaul is killed, and Shaul is mentioned that he didn't listen to God fully in this book, but we don't get into the details, and we don't really talk about how the terrible evil mistakes, the killing of all the people in the city of Nov that Shaul did, and other things here. So again, this chapter is obviously an important one for us. Second Temple period. Who are the real Jews? Who are the quote unquote the owners of the temple? Who were the ones who were supposed to build the temple? Who are the people who are supposed to serve in the temple? Right? It's going back. It was all of Israel brought the ark of God to Jerusalem. All of Israel accepted David as their king. All of Israel was joyous over this event. So who does the temple belong to? No, as not when we talk about Tovia and Sanballat in the time of Ezra and Nehemiah, when we go further back, and the Samaritans, the Shomronim, at the time of, that would be before this book was written, but at the time of Cyrus, the time when Zerubbabel was trying to build the temple, right? There was a lot of those who were opposed to the project, who said the Jews are rebelling. The Jews aren't for with you, king of the king of Persia or the others. And what this book again is demonstrating is this is our land, this is our place, this is our temple, and that's what we're doing here, and showing how it was done hundreds of years earlier with joy and with happiness, and therefore showing the centrality of David and the centrality of the temple to the Jewish experience in Israel.